Welcome to Hardcover. I'm Brittany Bryn. He's Peter Bryn, and this is an abundance of John Green's.
Yes, a man I have immense respect for as a writer and as a human being and as a content creator. I mean, John Green's channel is from 2007. That's really cool to me, to be able to see how YouTube has grown around the channel. And something else that's really cool is that John has kind of adapted this YouTube ambassador role, and a lot of times when YouTube is testing new things, they'll go to John Green's channel, first of all.
I also really respect John Green for writing some very interesting young adult fiction that has grown into film and audiobook adaptations and have reached a whole audience of people all over the world. So it's very cool. We're going to be talking about John Green as a writer and as a internet presence, and also as a content creator. Like you said, like he's always doing things online. He's always part of these bigger projects, and so it's just really interesting to look at his work as a whole.
John Green is known for really 4.5 novels that he's written, and the first being Looking for Alaska. After that was an Abundance of Catherines, which Brittany and I have just finished reading. After that, John wrote Paper Towns, and finally, which is his most probably famous novel he's written, is The Fault in Our Stars.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really like the big breakout for him. I mean, the other novels sold pretty well in the young adult community, but The Fault in Our Stars was voted the #1 young adult novel of the 2000s or something. It beat out Harry Potter.
Yes.
I think this was on Goodreads. Like it was a very, I was kind of taken aback by it,
Mm-hmm.
but there you go. There's The Fault in Our Stars. It's a big movie now,
Yeah.
very famous. So that's where I guess John Green is. Oh, and his .5 novel that I mentioned there's a book called Will Grayson, which is written by John Green and David Levithan. John Green writes every odd number chapter. David writes every even numbered chapter.
Many of the books deal with similar themes, but in differing ways. If you've read one John Green novel, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all the same, and you can definitely look to the other ones for different ideas and different ways of exploring those ideas.
John released his first book, Looking for Alaska. This predates YouTube. This predates his presence there. Looking for Alaska, which was actually followed pretty closely by the start of his YouTube channel, but not. So he was just a writer at that point. Now,
Just a writer.
just a writer. When he wrote the first novel, he didn't even really think it would be published or done. It's a young adult novel. It covers the themes that like teenagers would go through, and it explains a lot of how people interact, in like a school setting, boarding school, that kind of thing. And a lot of that book is kind of autobiographical because John didn't know if he was going to write something else at this point. And so he wrote a lot of himself into that book as a different character.
Looking for Alaska was the first book that I read of John Green, and I think it's still my favorite one.
Yeah.
It's grounded in American literary tradition. There are many references to things like to Salinger, Ernest Hemingway, writing about what it means to be a man, but also writing about courage. If you're looking at Hemingway and like the complexities around that, but also looking at human relationships, especially in times of when stakes are high. And something I really loved about the book was just how real the characters felt and how well developed everybody that we see in the novel as a main character or a main player is. The secondary characters can be a little one-sided, but you do get a sense that there's more going on with them that we don't get to see. But the three main characters especially, you really, really feel like they are actual people dealing with actual things. And so makes it really easy to be immersed in the novel. And there are very funny parts in that book as well. And there's this question of action and how do we act in the world that goes beyond just reacting to circumstance. And I think that's something that shows up in a lot of John Green's novels. What does it mean to be an individual affecting change in the world? And so I don't know, I really liked Looking for Alaska, even though it had really, really sad parts. And something else John Green does is he often integrates an underlying philosophical discussion that emerges at times in the novel. And some people don't like that. They think it's a little too, highbrow or forced. But I think that really resonates with young adults because they're starting to consider these bigger questions of what life is really about. Looking for Alaska was a bit controversial as it was banned in a school because of one particular scene involving oral sex.
They banned Looking for Alaska in the school, and John responded by going on his YouTube channel and pointing out that this is just crazy that they would ban it based on this one scene. So then he read the scene. It was good.
Yeah, because it wasn't portraying it in a like go out and do this. It was more about the relationship in the book and questioning that relationship. So and he brought up this really good point that I think it just resonated so much with me because he brought up that young adults are critical readers. They don't just absorb things and say, oh yeah, that's great, like I'm gonna go do all those things. They actually think about them and like in some ways they're even more critical than adults because they're still figuring out the world and they want to explore all these different ideas. And so I think that's an interesting note on his writing style as well, that he's writing to young adults as critical thinkers.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of literary criticism that's coming against John Green. Not against John Green as a writer, but more against John Green's portrayal of how certain things are happening. Like, for example, in Looking for Alaska, Paper Towns especially, and maybe even a bit in other novels of his, the love interest is very like romanticized and very pedestaled. The main character will worship this ideal behind what this love interest is. Now in Paper Towns, it's really interesting because he turns that over on his head in that the main character, his name is Q, he goes through most of the book idolizing this character, Margot Roth Spiegelman, and the entire, I'm not going to spoil anything about the book, but the book is just about how like worshiping someone is just not a good thing, and it's not a thing people should do. And Looking for Alaska, I mean, there's a lot of character worship there. And I just want to point out that a lot of young males do this. Like, they idolize women when they do have a love interest, they're the most important person in the world, and they're up on this big pedestal. And I feel like John's maybe writing about that. But there is a lot of literary criticism that comes at John for that, because it's like, oh, he writes these love interests that are just way over the top. Or I feel like you actually just have to read into it a bit more because it's a book. You should read a book. But actually, the love interest in Abundance of Catherines, which I'm also not going to spoil, is presented a lot more normally than from Looking for Alaska or Paper Towns. And so if you look at the love interest in like Will Grayson, I mean, there's multiple love interests with multiple people in that book. But one of the Will Graysons, because there are two Will Graysons in that book, one of the Will Graysons' love interest is not really worshiping this girl, as more of a, hey, you're interesting.
I feel like all of John Green's novels are, in some respect, about friendship and about how important those relationships are. So even with the romantic interest, oftentimes friendship will be a key part of that relationship, or the main character won't ditch his friends, or if he does ditch his friends for this love interest, like, it's seen as a bad thing. So that sense of friendship as being core and being important to a healthy and fulfilled life is something that shows up, I think, in all of the novels.
One more criticism that he does get a lot, actually, is that his characters are very heteronormative, as in guy falls in love with girl falls in love with guy. And he's actually written Will Grayson to sort of combat that, because one of the main characters is gay, and he does a lot of writing with this gay character there. But the heteronormative characters within the rest of his, like, in his full-length novels are pretty like set in their ways. And he actually addressed this on his channel, and he's very open about like that it's not intentional, that this is just how he wanted to portray his characters that he was writing, and it's really interesting that is like pointed out as hey, your characters are being, like I said, heteronormative. Where's the room for exploration? Where's the differences in how characters are even portrayed, or how they're dating, or their relationships are together. So John, once this criticism kind of hit the mainstream, which was on his YouTube channel, he addressed it, and he also mentioned that he's really moving away from that.
Will Grayson, which John Green and David Levithan wrote together, is definitely expanding that heteronormative spectrum for John Green, I think, because he does write a character whose name is Tiny Cooper, who is very openly gay, and David Levithan's point of view character is gay. So there is that room being made, I think, in those novels, at least from that point. And something else, like, I really loved Will Grayson, because you have these two characters who have the same name. You can still definitely tell which chapters are John Green's chapters for sure. But the book itself is so fun, even though it's dealing with these ideas of identity and acceptance and what pushes you to create or to take risks in relationships, because I think that's something, taking risks in relationships. Something else that comes up in a lot of John Green novels, which is especially apparent in Will Grayson, is the idea of identity and how your name is associated with that, because in literature, oftentimes someone's name will be incredibly important and will often give hints about their character or what their role is in the book even. So with Will Grayson, you have these very two different characters who are both delightfully well fleshed out, who have the same name, but that doesn't define who they are. And there are many Will Graysons in the book, and all of them are very different. They are not defined by what their name is. There's this really funny part where Tiny Cooper is saying, he's writing this musical, and he's saying like, oh, but this character that I made up that is not you, but is kind of you, whose name is Phil Rayson. You know, his name...
I think it was Gil Rayson.
Gil Rayson first, and then he changes it to Phil Rayson because Will won't leave him alone. But he's like, no, Rayson's really important because it means like the sun of the main character has to like shine on Phil Rayson to, get like awake him to life or whatever. And I think that was just a really clever jab there on that tendency for writers to making names so like the ultimate symbol of a character instead of allowing the character to kind of own their name. And
yeah, it's poking fun at making names abundantly important, which is also funny in the title of his second book, An Abundance of Catherines, because the main character only dates girls named Catherine.
Yeah, and that idea of identity and who we are and who defines who we are, or do we define ourselves, and how do we matter in the world too, I think is something, especially in Abundance of Catherines, talks about like how do we matter, and is it more important to matter to one person or to matter to more people, and can we matter to everybody? Can we be a genius and famous, or should we focus on mattering to the people in our lives who we care about, like our friends and people we tell our stories to?
Yes. Paper Towns is actually also a movie right now. I haven't seen it. I've just read the book. I enjoyed the book a lot, which is probably why I haven't seen the film. John himself says it's good, but, maybe he's supposed to say it's good, so... I don't know. I mean, he's very honest. Like, he's a very, I wouldn't expect John would lie, like that kind of thing, but maybe the writer of the book likes it for different reasons why other people would, so I don't know. I feel like I'll see it eventually, because I do want to see how it coincides with the book, but apparently the ending has changed, and I like the ending of Paper Towns as the book, so we'll see. We will see. The really cool thing about John Green and the way he does his YouTube channel is, I'll just explain this for people who don't know John, is like that John and his brother Hank have been creating content for like, the good on 10 years, and the way they do it is they've been creating video blogs and talking to each other through video blogs because they live on opposite ends of the country or different places. Hank has moved like once or twice, so they're in different geographical areas of the United States, and this is how they talk, and this is how they interact. So they started this as a project of this is how they communicate with each other, and they called the channel the Vlog Brothers. And in 2007, this was a thing that wasn't really done.
I first saw John Green on Crash Course. That's how I knew who he was when you started talking to me about his YouTube channel and about all the things that he did with his brother, because that was the framework I had. I'm like, oh, John Green does the educational program on YouTube that talks about books, and it's really good. But he does a lot more. He does so much.
Right, he definitely does a lot more. And Crash Course came out of a few Vlog Brothers videos where they talked about the need to be more educational and the need to spread that around YouTube and around popular where people are consuming media. Think of all your friends right now. Think of I'm generalizing within, say, the age group of 25 to 30, or even younger than that. Let's just say maybe 20 to 30, right? Think of all the people that you know that are around that age, and then think of all those people who own cable. I can only think of legitimately one person who had cable and has just gotten rid of it because all they do is watch YouTube and Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how they consume their media. And the thing is, people are not stopping watching TV. It's not like they don't watch TV shows. It's not like they don't consume, other media, but they're not watching it on cable.
No.
They're watching it on YouTube. They're watching it on Netflix, which is where Crash Course comes in to deliver this content to people for free. And yeah, they say it's forever going to be free. They're never going to charge, which is really neat. The way they're actually using the way they fund Crash Course is all built on Patreon, which was founded by John Green. So actually, John worked on Subbable, which was actually purchased and bought out and recreated into Patreon. So Crash Course is such an inspiration to this show.
Absolutely.
And I remember, Brittany, when we sat down and we were having coffee and we were talking about like what we want the show to be, to look like. And we both mentioned at the same time John Green's Crash Course videos. And you said, like, you've seen those? And I said, like, yeah. Like, of course I have. It's so awesome that John is being known for something that's not books and not Vlog Brothers. It means that he's done what he wanted to do, and that's create content, create educational content. Because it's such an influence to how we want our show to be and how we want our show to be perceived, it's really cool that we're able to, I guess, talk about
for sure
our inspiration.
Yeah. Thanks, John Green. You're the best. Yeah, they cover everything on Crash Course. It's expanded into such a network of different people as well. Like, they have different hosts now. It's not just Green. They do everything from world history to philosophy. Hank Green did that one, to video games, which was hosted by Andre the Black Nerd, who is also a YouTuber. And so it's just grown into this wonderful source for educational information on all these topics.
There's actually a Canadian connection to Crash Course, which we'd be remiss to leave out, is the Thought Bubble. The Thought Bubble is Canadian. So it's produced in Canada. It's by Canadians. And there's a Thought Bubble in every episode of Crash Course. So, you know what? I mean, I can't say enough good things about Crash Course. I love it. There's a literature branch of Crash Course that John does. And there's so many great episodes on that, which we don't try to compete with.
No.
Like, they did a Sylvia Plath episode, so I don't think we're gonna do a Sylvia Plath. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless he does like a Treasure Island episode, then maybe we're in trouble. But we did it first on Hardcover.
Oh man.
John actually released a video like a week ago that explained that their initial goal behind Crash Course was to get rid of textbooks, because textbooks are expensive. They're always out of date. And by what I mean about always out of date is, like, even when it's printed, like the day after that, there is new information, which you can easily cover on Crash Course, but you can definitely not easy cover with a textbook. Like, you have to say, buy this new one, which is $160, or just go on Crash Course and download their PDF for free.
Yes.
Because yes, like Crash Course, their entire curriculum is available for free. Hank Green has a media empire.
Yes, a media empire.
And it's a big running joke between them, because it's just really funny the way Hank has done so many things with his life. And
he runs SciShow. He has like all these projects on the go all the time.
dude started VidCon.
Yes.
I mean, this guy is like, he's doing things really well. And I guess now is a good time to just mention the way what they do with their money. So Vlogbrothers is their big channel. It's got like 2.5 million subscribers on it on YouTube, and their videos are monetized, which means they make money off of their advertisements. But none of that goes to them. Like, it all goes to charity, and that's one of the coolest things. Like, they've just done a video about how apparently their charity, just the revenue money from YouTube was able to pay for like a closed tap well in Ethiopia or something that feeds that'll service around 2,000 people.
That's incredible.
It's really cool to see, actually a tangible thing that you can look at and say, John Green is making the world a better place.
John Green will often be available for like Q&As online or through his YouTube channel. I mean, you asked him a question the other day, and he responded.
Yeah,
which was really cool.
Yeah, he was doing this Q&A thing on his phone, and I asked something about audiobooks, and I said my wife and I were listening to an audiobook, and I asked if he'd ever narrate one, which, by the way, he has narrated just one. He's narrated a version of The Fault in Our Stars, but he said it's really hard because you have to sit still, and John doesn't like to sit still, which is evident if you've ever watched a John Green video ever.
Yep.
It was really cool. He said, say hi. So there's our personal connection to John.
Like 10 seconds of
the Weird Al song, like Lame Claim to Fame.
Oh yeah,
That's our Lame Claim to Fame.
There it is.
Yeah. So Vlogbrothers started in 2007 it was actually called Brotherhood 2.0. Back then it was just like a project for these two to communicate with each other, because they hadn't really communicated with each other that often, and they wanted to tell each other about their lives. And if you look at the earlier videos, they're a lot different than now, where now they will address more of the person watching the video, and before they would address each other more. But they've kind of learned that the popularity of this channel is really something they can use and leverage to do a lot of good and to educate people in a lot of different ways about things like what's going on in Syria, or how to vote in the United States, what where everybody's taxes are going. Like, there are a lot of videos that are interspersed within their vlogs that are just a few. Sometimes they'll have the vlogs that are just funny or just about random things, and sometimes there'll be these educational ones, but they do have rules about that. The video has to be under 4 minutes, but if the video is over 4 minutes, it has to be educational. And they've been doing it for like 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's like, that is a commitment to a bit right there.
Yeah. Oh, the one though that stands out to me and I could immediately bring to mind is the one where Hank is talking about when his dog dies.
Yeah.
That one was really interesting because he's just very vulnerable about his grief, and the video itself was very like there's just shots of him walking with his feet and something that he wrote. So sometimes it is so incredibly personal and vulnerable, the videos that they're making to each other. But I appreciate that, because when you're making content, sometimes like having a persona is a really big temptation, because people are watching and that this content is going to be viewed. But just like videos like that where they're just being so honest, it just hurts, but it also can be healing, because you know that there are people in the world who really care about the world and their experience and want to share it with people. So yeah, I think that's just, I don't want to say inspirational, because that's like, oh, it's so inspirational, but you know what I mean? Like it just moves me to be more like that, and to be okay with being vulnerable with those kind of things that are happening.
And this has definitely made all the more apparent in John's latest video. At least at the time of this episode, his latest video was about failure, and how he's failed to really live up to when he wrote The Fault in Our Stars, and how he was writing then. And he's written like 3 or 4 stories since then. He's had to throw them out, and sitting in a hotel room realizing one of his stories isn't going to be a book and just crying. Like, those are very vulnerable moments. And one of the quotes that's just probably like, it's just so devastating to hear this person that you really respect say like this kind of thing. He says, "I missed writing, but in the way you miss someone you used to love."
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he goes on to say like, "I may never publish another book again."
And yeah, that's just so like, oh no.
Yeah, and you feel like you've missed that kind of thing.
So,
But
yeah.
at the same time, if John never publishes a book again, it's almost okay because he's done so many other things with his life. Vlogbrothers is huge. Crash Course is getting even bigger. He's involved with like VidCon, and he's just such a good force for nerd fighters in general. So I'll explain nerd fighters. In one of the first, I think it's like the 5th or something, Vlogbrothers video they've ever done, John's in an airport and he's waiting for a plane and he's talking to Hank on his phone. So he's doing this video for Hank and he walks by like an arcade machine that has a video game on it and he misreads the title of the video game and he says, "Hank, this looks like it says Nerd Fighters." And it caught on, and that's a thing. And now people who watch the videos or are just involved in that community are called nerd fighters. Like when Brotherhood 2.0 ended at the end of 2007, they just decided they would keep doing this vlog thing, and you can actually go watch the video on their channel about that. That explains like what they're gonna do and how they're going to reimagine a lot of their content and how they're talking to each other. But yeah, the nerd fighters is just. It's a way to, I guess, communicate with John or Hank or other friends who know the Vlogbrothers. There's a lot of people who just call themselves nerd fighters. The whole general group is called Nerd Fighteria. So it's just a great kind of play on words, and they're just having fun. Okay, so, I mean, yeah, John has done so much good work for the world, and John and Hank together do good work all the time. I really recommend checking out John's books and checking out Vlogbrothers and all the things that the Nerd Fighters and John and Hank are doing.
Today's harmonica segment, we were talking about how John Green often includes things about identity and names in his books. So do you have any cool stories about your name? Like maybe somebody thought it was something else, or there was a name mix-up, or, like someone always misspells your name. That's probably mine. Like, everyone always misspells Brittany, and that's okay. I understand that my spelling is weird. So you can tweet us your name stories at Hardcover Radio.
Hardcover is a thing because of you, the listener, as well as their supporters at CJAM, a non-profit radio station that provides stuff that's not offered by the mainstream media in the Windsor and Detroit area. We're here because of your generous support and donations, so thanks for listening.
You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, Patreon, wherever you can find us. And you can always check out our website at hardcoverradio.com for more.